You're listening to the Devil Dog Talk Show.
This show contains explicit material and is recommended for ages 18 and older for mature audiences only. But hey, it's the internet.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Devil Doc Talk Show. Today we have Jared Rinehart of the Heroic Hearts Project. Yes, you heard that correct. The Heroic Hearts Project. Now, me and Jared are going to dive really deep into some amazing conversations I don't think you guys are prepared for. So, first and foremost, thank you, Jared, for showing up, and thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time and your energy, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, and I really appreciate coming on, Joey. I've been looking forward to this since I got your email a while back.
Solid. Me too. Okay. Like I get excited about the shows. Yeah, people know. They're like, why does Joey do this? Because it excites me. It's the best thing to me is to share amazing individuals like yourself and amazing missions and messages like the Heroic Hearts Project in which you guys are building. And when I kind of read into a little bit about yourself, I was like, fuck yeah. Yeah, get some, brother. Right? Because we'll get on into that. So a little bit about yourself. How did you get into the environment? Let's say, how did you join the military, since that's the relevant topic for today?
Well, like most of us from, I guess, our generation, 9/11 happened, and I was in high school when 9/11 happened, like freshman, and then I always wanted to be a Marine since I could probably say the word Marine. I don't know why. I probably watched some like Aliens versus Predator movie or something with like the Space Marines and was like, hell yeah, those are the guys I want to be. Little did I know that wasn't going to be the case, but I joined the Marine Corps at 19 in 2006, and then got into security forces, and then after that I went to 2-7 as a machine gunner for a couple of years, and so primarily infantry most of my time in the military, or most of my time in the Marine Corps, and then I got out in 2011.
Oh wow, 2011. That's the same year I got out. Actually, it's a good year. Yeah, it's a great year actually. Very, very, very interesting year of my life. How was your transition coming out of the military?
I've described it as the hardest 2 to 4 to 6 years of my life.
Oh, wow.
It was I mean, it wasn't difficult in the sense that I just didn't know what I was like, how to integrate back into a normal way of thinking. And there's a lot of books written about this, and you hear this from other vets a lot, but it was like losing, there was a sense of purpose that came from being in the Marine Corps. And the funny thing was I was so looking forward to getting out of the Marine Corps. Like I was counting down the days probably since like year 1 was over. And I was like, well, 3 more years, 4 more years to go, and I'm almost done. And so when I got out, I didn't think it was going to be like easy, but I definitely was like, well, nothing's going to be harder than this. And then it was, like I got out, and my young marriage that I had in the Marine Corps fell apart. I couldn't really hold a job. My drinking only increased like tenfold. And then increase of like anger, substance use, violent tendencies. And the only job I could really hold was like security or construction. And getting out as a grunt, the only other option for me was either go to school, and school and me were never really buddy. Like I didn't really like high school. I tried college a couple times, but just never really wanted to get through it. And then so the other option was be a cop. And I would not make a good cop. So not that I don't respect cops, I do, but I think it takes a special kind of person to not to be a police officer. So like I'm just not that special kind of person. I think either A, would have abused my power, or would have lost all hope in humanity as being a cop. So the other option for me at that point was become a contractor, because it was the only like the only place that I felt like how I was as a person at that time was considered normal, where like
Mm.
my ultra paranoidness, my hypervigilance, my aggression and my training and everything could be used somewhere. So that's what I did. So after 2 years of like trying to find work and getting through a divorce and everything else, I signed up to contract and then just went right back to Afghanistan and Iraq for like 4 years.
Jesus, 4 more years after you
Yeah, but
just
it was
wanted
good
nothing
pay.
more than get out of here. Yeah, it's a good paying gig. That's true. It is a very, very good paying gig. It's just demanding, and
Yeah.
it's really rough. So how were those years while you were contracting, and how did you take what you learned in the Marine Corps? And I want to say keep yourself moving forward. Clearly there was a lot more going on. But how did you stay committed to your passion, the job?
Um, well, that identity that I had of being a Marine, um, was, I mean, like dug in like a tick. So keeping keeping the motivation for staying in the warrior mindset didn't wasn't an issue. Um, but it was learning how and where to use it appropriately.
Mhm.
That was what I think I was struggling with. But so as a contractor, it was easier because again, all of that mindset was still out there. And I could really use that. But um the job, obviously, well, maybe not obviously for listeners or people who haven't contracted, but for my contracts, they weren't really kinetic. It was a lot of guarding and a lot of doing nothing for a long time, and getting paid really good money to just be in a really shitty area of the world. And but like I was hanging out with people who were like-minded, that were in the same place as me. Most of them were much older than me and had like 3 divorces and a bunch of houses they were paying off. And like they all had their reasons for like trying to get more money to pay off their debt, and this is the way they learned how to do it. But um yeah, it was I honestly thought that if I would have immediately got out and went into contracting, it would have been an easier transition, because it went from I have no choice but to do this job that I'm doing into I can get fired or quit anytime I want. And so like there was at least like some sort of transition into civilian autonomy
Mhm.
I was not used to. So, but I really enjoyed my contracting time, and there was and it gave me a lot of time to think. Like there was because there it was monotonous a lot of the times, because it was just the same thing pretty much every day. And so you just got used to your routines and stuff. And so like I really enjoyed that time to myself, especially, I mean, like, no kids, no wife, no like attachments back home. So it was like, okay, yeah, I can go and be overseas for as long as I want, and do that. And to be honest, man, if my life hadn't had taken like a huge left turn, I probably would still be contracting, or my plan was is just to contract until I made like enough money to invest that I didn't have to work ever again.
That's a good plan. A lot of gentlemen, I would say, that are in that, I don't know if they call it a pipeline anymore, but like that kind of pipe dream. Ooh,
Yeah.
kind of the same thing. It's the same mentality where you're sacrificing something that you're not probably capable of doing at that time, and it's costing something that maybe we don't really fully understand or see or feel at the time, because I know the job is demanding, right? And you say it's mundane, it's routine. And I go, absolutely. Those are the best jobs. Those are the best days when your stuff is security or medicine. Okay. Hey, I don't want to work. Okay. You don't want to work. Okay. Let's be honest. All right. I love how sexy all these, professions have gotten. Thanks, John Wick. But what I can say is, yeah, right. What I can say is it's this very much romanticized effort within this purview of masculinity that doesn't necessarily breed quality of life, right? It's not something that I would, recommend. On Yelp, I'd say 2.5 stars. This is better than going to the VA by all means. Okay, go to 0 stars for them, but 2.5 for contracting. Okay, because at least you'll have enough money to pay for your medical bills.
Yeah, but no time to spend it. Like that's the other
Yes.
thing. Like my contracts that I was on, I was out for 11 months and then they gave me 30 days off a year. So I'm like 11 months in country and 30 days at home. And that's not all contracts. Some of them have a better rotation, but that was the ones I was on. So it was,
Jesus,
yeah,
that's demanding.
yeah.
Now, carrying it back to the past a little bit further, what was your role in the Marine Corps? And I believe you said machine gunner. What was that like serving as that specific MOS or position within Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever you deployed? What was your experience going into that relationship with battle, so to speak?
So it's interesting. So when I got into the Marine Corps, I was told that I was going to be going into a special group, so to speak, and not special ops, but like a special type of infantry. And, they told me I was going to get a clearance and all this stuff. And then, so my first 2 years in, after I got done with my MOS school to be a machine gunner, they sent me to Washington State to guard nuclear subs for 2 years.
Solid.
So while all my friends that I had joined with or knew were like deploying multiple times, I was in the United States doing like the most boring and most haze filled like job that there could be. I mean, like it was so garrison and so and like we'd have Pogue wannabe operators who came in to be our like sergeants or our staff sergeants going in for their secondary like MOS for all that. And then they would be in charge of us and they would just be so garrison and it would be so and I say hazing because I mean it really was. I mean like it sucked. So it pretty much like didn't prepare me to go to the fleet as a machine gunner. I learned a lot about being in 0311. For those who don't know, that's just a rifleman. Like, but I didn't do a lot with being a machine gunner. And then I got promoted to corporal right before I left that MOS, that job, to go to the fleet. And when I got to the fleet, I was a corporal, and all these guys had already gone on multiple deployments and had all these ribbons and all this experience. And then they're like, hey, you're a corporal. Now you're in charge of this section who just got back from one of the most heinous Afghanistan deployments together. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I didn't know shit about my job. So some people would have been motivated and like really hit the books and like really learn. I did not. I was totally like dropped my pack and was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And like for lack of a better term, I was pretty much treated like a boot corporal the rest of my enlistment. And then when we did get an opportunity to deploy, it was on a MEU, which was, I mean, like it's funny now looking at it in my late 30s. When I was on ship about to go to Thailand or Singapore to see like the cool places that you can go on a MEU, I was wishing I was in like a fighting hole in Afghanistan, when I know now that there were guys in Afghanistan going like, fuck, I wish I was going to Thailand like right now, like screw this. So like I got to do a lot of cool stuff with training and like going to see and train other countries and do that as a machine gunner. But I never got my opportunity to go to war like I wanted to. One of the main reasons I became a contractor was because I felt like I was cheated. And like, and I'll tell you, and maybe there's some of your listeners out there who can resonate, but like it felt like my service meant nothing getting out and not going to Afghanistan or Iraq, because like I joined the infantry to go to war and didn't ever get that opportunity to go to Iraq or Afghanistan. And I felt like, man, it meant nothing. So I had to go do something with it. So that's why I spent 4 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, like total as a contractor.
Trying to pay it forward. I resonate that with very much because I hear that it's not uncommon, right? And especially in our day and age where, like I said, it's too sexy. I think it's hyper romanticized. We don't talk about the fallout as much. We don't talk about the support we all need, even the ones that didn't make it out there. I think it may be worse because at least the guys like me and girls like me and people that went out and did it, even though you did it and as a contractor, there's this relationship where we're trying to I don't know, submit to some kind of societal standard of metrics, where we're looking at
Mm.
it. And I go, that's fine. But I do find it that it's rooted in the individual, your character, right? And you served the nation, you did these security forces. I know gentlemen that were grunts that would look up to you because you were in security forces and you got to do that kind of a job with the submarines. I mean, period, right? It exposes you to a different environment. And this is the reason why the Marine Corps and the Navy, the two sources that I've ever served with, right? But they have this profound allurement for success and this ability to provide opportunities, right? And when we feel as though we reached for that carrot that we originally perceived would be our mission or our service, right? And it's switched out, it's like, wait a minute, right? The
Mhm.
identity of self goes, hey man, I just wanted to go ta 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 ta
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Have a good old day, right? And I get it, and it's just this beautiful moment where I go, I'm glad that you were able to fulfill somewhat that desire, because to not have it or not it remains a veil, right? And you can't peek through.
Yes.
You're like, well, I don't know how that really was, and now you're like, shit, I didn't miss shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny you say that because like I got home after the Marine Corps and I call up my buddies who had been on deployments and I would talk to them about like what I'm going through.
Mm.
And I'd be like, I'm fucking pissed all the time. I can't hold a job, all the stuff I already said. And they would be like, bro, me too. And it used to drive me crazy because I was like, well, these guys, like they were in combat, like they were in the shit. So and they have an excuse for like why they're fucked up. What's my excuse? Like what's wrong with me? Like, and that drove me crazy for a while, like trying to wrap my head around like why am I having nightmares still? Why am I having like these symptoms that they have of these things? But they're like, yeah, man, I deployed. So that's the thing. And it wasn't until like much later in my life when I really unpacked like where all that was coming from. And it wasn't like the Marine Corps didn't do that to me. The Marine Corps was like a pressure cooker for the stuff that I wasn't dealing with in my life before. That all just kind of came to the surface afterwards.
That's a very perfect way of saying it, because that's exactly what a lot of these that's exactly what it is. Okay, boot camp is to break you down, build you back up, and be something, right? And then the whole mission and tempo and philosophy of what it is to serve, the camaraderie, it becomes very familiar. So when this relationship shifts, right, there's always this abrupt abandonment, right? And all those issues come flowing out. It's not, I, I don't say it's malicious with intention beyond what the outcomes are. However, when we discuss it at length and we could provide insight, we could provide resolution, we could provide opportunity, right? Like we'll get to with the Heroic Hearts Project, right? I find it to be particularly malicious, based off of the lack of desire to become educated, right?
Mm.
And that stems from everything, right? From people who serve with contracts, the people who serve in agencies that are not recognized, that aren't maybe measured in the public eye as the same as some of the guys that I know that I deployed with, right? Some of the guys that I saved their lives, right? They're still dealing with this. I don't know what you want to call it, but it's very propaganda-esque. It's a performance, right? We
Mhm.
care, we know we care, but The problem becomes, how do we then shift and change these emotions? Like, how do I change how I felt by not deploying, right? Well, talk to somebody that deployed. Well, if it's this trade-off of information and mentorship, right? You probably have more skills and assets with the security forces, right, than the majority of the grunts, right? And that's just because of roles experiences, right? That's why we do a lot of OJT in the Navy and the Marine Corps, dog. Like, you
Yeah.
better catch on. All right. Hey, if it's between me and you, I'd be there. Here, hold this IV football. We got to do all this. You're gonna hold your shit. I'm gonna hold my shit. We got to spread load. Okay, it's a team. And I think we forget that, for people like yourself, that if this pressure cooker then doesn't slow down before it's released, it blows up, right? If it's this
Mhm.
pop instead of a shh. And I
Yeah.
think that's that decompression post service, or even while in service, when we have a trajectory of treatment, or we have a trajectory of outcome, I do believe we as a nation are more obligated to step in and go, hey, here's some better ways and better days, my guy. But for you, how did you overcome those internal battles? What did you start seeking?
Um, I don't know what the catalyst was, but I honestly, I just want to say psychedelics is what kind of was the catalyst for a shift of mindset for me. And that was not in a therapeutic way. And I didn't expect it to be that way. It was, like, I would come home on leave, from, contract, and all my friends were punks, growing up, and not, and not in the military or anything, but they loved me, and we always would go hang out. And for like the month that I was home, man, it was a party fest. Like, I would just, like, I'd pay for everything, and or pay for a lot of it, and I would take them out and we'd do cool stuff. And at the end of it, man, we would always do some kind of psychedelic, because I was just like, why not? And so doing that, it, like, for a while, it was like, well, that was fun and weird. That was a weird experience, and not much. But what I didn't know is the same thing that I kind of let vets know now that they're about to go kind of on these experiences, is that like it's it's an awareness expander.
Mm.
Taking these things, like, you become more self-aware, which can be a double-edged sword depending on how you look at yourself. But I started looking at things in a different light, but it was so subtle that I don't know if I would pick up on it until after I had a big awakening to myself experience, I should call it. In when I went to the jungle in 2016. But I think that I started looking into, like, because these substances that I was taking, first of all, were kind of a cracking open of that zeitgeist that we're talking about, the propaganda side of things.
Hmm.
Because it was like, when I really looked into the research around this, like, just safety alone, I was like, why? These things are super safe. Like, they're very safe, especially if you do them, in a certain environment or whatever. Okay. So what else have they been lying to me about? And I say they, mean like the information that's been fed to me since I was a kid about things.
Hmm. No, that's really profoundly amazing, because to me, that seemed to be more or less not my personal experience. I didn't necessarily party with anything. In fact, a little bit of alcohol here and there. I like to drink back in the day. But when I hit my breaking point, about 2015, yep, 2015, just before I went out to meet with Sue Sisley, Dr. Sue Sisley, Roger Martin, the Cannabis Investors Summit there in Denver, and then of course the Cannabis Cup. Right, I got to meet the Super Troopers, got all that signed up. Guys, this is cool, whatever. Really great people, right? And what I was learning then was that there's these opportunities to have conversations of not just this psychedelics, but let's look at the totality of what do we call it? Alternative medications, right?
Yes.
When we look at that, I felt not jaded, not bittered, but disillusioned, right? And that disillusionment did come with a bit of dissonance. Why aren't we talking about these things? Why are these substances, like you said, being discussed in a manner of which they don't seem safe, right? And I find it to be the most peculiar asset that I ever used. Okay, because yes, it didn't cure me. There is no cure for what I have. Okay, I think it's a societal circumstance of relationships and development and understanding mutual. There's this great psychologist that discussed it. I'm pretty sure he was French. What I'm saying is that there's so much stuff out there, right? What was it that helped you the most kind of break through that?
Um, well, I would say the first thing that I tried was cannabis with my friends. And I think it, probably around 2014 or something. I was also at my breaking point and having some horrendous suicide ideation, and was very close to just like ending it. And I called my friends up, and they had come over, and I think I'd been drinking for probably like a week straight, like not
Jeez.
eating. Like they came into my house, and there was like all these empty bottles all over my floor, and they were like, and they and they looked around, they're like, that's a way to start a month. Like, okay. Um and so they basically all brought over, and this is Washington State, so it was legal at this point, like for cannabis. So like they all brought over all this weed, and we hotboxed the hell out of my apartment, and I had a great time. But my good friend Dre at the time, he told me, man, if you're ever feeling down like this, he's like, don't reach for the bottle, just, you know, smoke a joint, man, if that's what you're looking for. And so that was at that point, that's when drinking started calming down for me, because I did start reaching for a joint instead. And I was replacing one habit and, and blocking some stuff with the other, but it was a much more productive way of managing those emotions that I didn't know how to manage on my own yet with. And I'm not a if anybody's wondering, I'm not about abstinence. I don't think that abstinence is the correct way to go, but I do think that all things can be used as tools until that becomes your only tool, and that's when you have to really look at yourself and say, like, if this is the only thing I know how to use to move through these hard times or these emotions, that's something to look at in at least in myself. That's a direction I have. So cannabis really was the thing that helped move through the alcohol dependency with myself. Um and then, if you're talking about which psychedelic was the one that like really blew me open, I guess would be ayahuasca.
Wow.
Yeah. That was that's a I mean, if we got time, I got a long story, but it's so
Absolutely.
2016. It kind of leads up in a weird way, because like I said, I was doing psychedelics with my friends when I would go home on leave. And one time before I was going back to Iraq, a friend of mine, well, my girlfriend at the time, she had procured some DMT, and like the powder DMT. And I was like, and this isn't the toad, if you've heard of that either. It's not that one, it's the other one. To get technical, it's N dimethyltryptamine. But it's so she was like, you wanted to try this for a while. I was listening to a lot of Joe Rogan at the time, so Joe Rogan was always talking about DMT and all this stuff, and I was like, I gotta try this. Like, this sounds crazy.
Yeah.
And I tried it, and it was the first psychedelic at that moment that I'd ever taken that made me forget that I was on a psychedelic. Because every other time, like, I've always been like, man, I'm really high, like I'm just like in it. But this one like popped me out of my body, put me in a different like place, and that place was love and compassion and acceptance for me as a being. And I was just like wrapped up in just peace. And I know now that like anybody who tries DMT, it's a grab bag. Like you can have peace, you can also have like jesters and craziness. Like it's kind of wild in that aspect. So it's like, so if anybody's like, I gotta go try DMT, it sounds awesome. I just want you to know it's a grab bag, so you don't really know what you're gonna get. Um, but after that experience, it was so profound that I was like, I really want to find out more about this substance and about what it was.
Mm.
And I found out that ayahuasca was the traditional way of using DMT for like thousands of years, and that there were people still using it in that sense. And in 2016, it wasn't ayahuasca was known about, and there was, people were talking about it, but it was still very like there was only a few things on YouTube about it at that time. Now, I mean, you can't, I mean, like they're comedians telling jokes about drinking ayahuasca, like it's all over the place. But but so I was like, I'm gonna do this. If I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this the right way. And so I looked at when my next leave block was gonna be, and I was like, I'm going to go to Peru, and I'm going to sit with the indigenous people out there and do it in their traditional way. And so in April of 2016, I flew out to Pucallpa, Peru, and did a 9-day retreat out there, and we did 4 ceremonies with ayahuasca, and it was the hardest experience I ever went through in my life, but the most profound and eye-opening experience that changed me, my mindset, and my worldview so drastically that I never really went back to the way I was. And the way I was how I was describing before, hyper vigilant, angry, you know, never really let anybody get too close, trying to keep the tough guy mentality. So much so, man, that when I got back, because I left Peru, went back to Washington State for like a week, and then went back to Iraq. So I was fresh off of this like feel good, I'm in a great place thing, and then went back to Iraq for another 10 months. And and like
Jesus.
I know, and like, but like I said, like the contract was not very kinetic, so it was a lot of just routine security stuff, right? There wasn't a lot of sexy tough guy things going on. So, but what that did was it gave me an opportunity to like tune out from the world for a
Mm.
while and start adding things into my life. Because after that experience, I was much more open to trying new things, and I didn't want to lose this like good feeling that I had. Like I started looking at the world again like I did when I was a kid. Like it was like everything was just so new and awesome and vibrant, and I was interested in people again, and I was interested in like learning about cultures. And so like to give you some like black and white of how it was, like when I was in Iraq before I left, like my job was not only security, but to train the Iraqis to go fight ISIS in like, because they were still like pretty bad at that time. So I would treat the Iraqis terribly. I would always seem like I would always feel like they're gonna stab me in the back at any moment. And I was always just like talking shit and mean to them. And not only that, but I was the quintessential like grunt Marine around everybody. Like that was my persona. And so when I got back, I was listening, and I was kind, and I was genuinely interested in what was going on in other people's lives, and genuinely like curious about Iraqi culture. And it changed so much for me over that 10 months because I wasn't ever getting in contact with any of the Iraqis, but it turned into a place where like I became friends with my interpreters. I became friends with the guys that I was training. So much so that like these Iraqis they would bring me gifts from out in town because they were just like so grateful for the conversation that we had the week prior that they were there. They would share food with me, and we'd hang out, and I'd talk. And And then like even the guys I worked with like started to really enjoy my presence, and that was kind of new for me, like because I used to not even like being around me. Um, so much so, man, that I like after about 10 months, I was like, I don't really want to do this job anymore. And it wasn't that I was anti war or anti contracting or any of that stuff. It was just like I've done enough, and I'm really tired of volunteering for fighting. Like I was just like, I was like, I'm not opposed to fighting, but I'm just kind of done raising my hand to do it. And so yeah, man, it was a big shift. And during that time, that 10 months, what I was really integrating is I was looking more into, well, first of all, I was really trying to figure out what the hell had happened to me. Cause
Mhm.
like I was aware of how much I had shifted, and there was no words to describe what had happened, because I was like, there's no way a 9-day thing would change someone so drastically. So I started looking into things, and the only stuff that really had language to describe what I was talking about was, or had experienced, was like mystical, um, like text, ancient text from like, thousands of years ago. And so I started looking into Buddhism, and I started looking into Hinduism. I started looking into all the different space, looking into like mystical experiences and philosophy. And I started doing, and another transition was like, I used to go to the gym and it would be an anger dump. Like that's the
Mhm.
whole point. I would go to the gym to like let go of more anger, but now I didn't have a lot of anger. Like I literally I had puked all of that anger up in a bucket from with ayahuasca. Like that's one of the things that like I know I was purging, was like all of this anger. And so like I came back and it was like kind of empty. But so I started going to the gym with the mindset of like, I'm going to like feel better, to like make my body feel better. And I started doing more yoga, because stretching, I've read and now believe that flexibility is much, much better for longevity and happier life than strength. Like if you're just flexible, you'll probably be able to be in your 70s or 80s and feel better. So I started integrating all that, and the meditation as well. But I started learning about meditation and all of this stuff prior to going, because like I wanted to prepare for the ceremony, because everything I had heard about it was terrible. Like I
Oh,
heard it was
really?
like awful. Like everybody was saying like going through the experience was really hard. So, and me being the Marine that I was like, well, I like hard shit. So I'm gonna go for it.
Can I
But I
have
was
seconds?
prepared. I wanted to be prepared, and everything that
Yeah.
I was reading or from the trip reports or everybody else always suggested things like breath work, meditation, yoga. Um, those things would prepare you best for ceremony. So I was like, I'm gonna learn how to do that. So I got the Headspace app and learned how to meditate, and then just continued it afterwards, those same practices, and it really helped to keep the longevity of that what I would call a bliss bubble is what it was. And so yeah, man, then so I quit that contracting job after 10 months of integrating back out there.
That's beautiful. That, to me, that's the best things in life, is finding something that works for you, helps you align with that deeper truth of who you are, right? Not saying that mistakes, hey, everybody makes them, right? And purging something out, period, whether it be through the utility of ayahuasca or whatever may help. Because my experience was mushrooms, right? I very much enjoyed it. It provided enough for a guy like me, right? I was like, hey, I get it, I got it, I'm walking it, got it, staying on that good foot, right? It's
Yeah.
something that no matter what gets you to that point, I think it's the most beautiful aspects of existence, where you can sit with yourself and tell yourself, no, I do love me, right? I love people. In fact, shit, I love God. I love this. I love, you know what? Even though I love it, right? There's always going to be that battle. Okay. And that's something that I respect dearly, by the terms you're using, by integration, right? Utility, try it, put a tool in the bucket, or the toolbox. There you go. Put a tool in the
Mhm.
toolbox. You want to throw up in the bucket, right? Put the tools in the toolbox. for you, I really want to ask you, how then did you go from that to something like the Heroic Hearts Project?
So, to continue the story, because it really picks up right from there,
Mhm.
I didn't know we're talking about integration. I still wasn't fully ready to go integrate back to the United States. That
Mm.
actually scared me more than doing what I just did, like going back to go drink ayahuasca. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Like I didn't, but I was more confident that no matter what I chose, it was going to be okay. Um, so I decided to go back to Peru, and drink ayahuasca again with with the tribe, with the Shipibo tribe,
Mm.
with that question now, like, hey, I feel like I got a lot out of what I learned from this. I want to know, what should I do next? And most of the time when you ask big existential questions like that to a psychedelic medicine, you don't usually get a direct answer. Some people may, but I didn't. Um, but I did get asked by now one of my best friends, who was the lead facilitator out there, if I wanted to stay in Peru for a while and basically learn how to facilitate and learn how to learn from the Shipibo about plants and ayahuasca and all of this. And I was like, yeah, I got nowhere to be. And I have a bank account full of money that I'm not going to touch, or I'll just probably, spend it on rent or whatever else. So I was like, yeah, absolutely. So I stayed in Peru for a year and lived with the Shipibo and learned all about Shipibo traditions and about plant medicines and about the power of not just psychedelic medicines, but like different plants in the jungles and like what the pharmacology of these things were. And they didn't use scientific phrases for things. They just said, like, matter of factly, like, this one will help with cancer, this one will help with like headaches, this one will help with this, and like, and they've learned this through like this traditional way of dieting, which is fascinating, where they basically fast for a long period of time, and they take little bits of these plants, and they talk about these plants will teach them like what they do or how to shift certain emotions or whatever. And before I would think that was crazy, but I had learned so much from one plant named ayahuasca about myself and the world that, like, why can't you learn other things from plants if you know how to listen? So it all sounds really hippy dippy, it's just the truth of it. It's how it was. So yeah, I spent a year facilitating. And then after that year, I was invited out very serendipitously to a retreat that was for veterans, being filmed for a documentary. And that documentary is out now. I think you can watch it on Gaia. It's called Ayahuasca Now. But I went out there as basically, I was like, I heard about this and I was excited to go, because one of the reasons I wanted to be a facilitator was because I was like, this helped me so much. I can only imagine if there's other vets that want to have this experience, at least there's another vet out there that they can talk to, that they could at least like relate to.
Yeah.
So this was an opportunity to be with nothing but veterans drinking ayahuasca and doing the thing that I had just been doing for a year. And so I met my wife, my now wife, at that retreat. And I also met the founder of HHP, who had just started this organization called Heroic Hearts Project, Jesse Gould, at that same retreat. So two of the most influential people I met at that retreat, and then went back to the States after that. And then Jesse asked me about 6 months after I had gotten back to the States, like, hey, we really need an integration coach. And I was like, okay, what's an integration coach? And he told me, it's like, hey, we need someone basically who's going to help the vets prepare for their experience with psychedelics, and then someone who's going to be there for them when they get back to help them integrate their experience. And he's like, I think you'd be great at it. And I was like, yeah, sweet. Sign me up. So that was back in the end of beginning of 2018, end of 2017 when I was doing that, and I was the only coach for HHP at that point. And now we have like a team of like 40 coaches, and yeah, it's just expanded immensely since then. And our program's changed a lot too. But so that's how I got into it. Yeah.
No, that's a beautiful way to get into it and a beautiful way to stay with it, right? I find it particularly interesting the way that you discuss not only the importance of the medicine, but the importance of the integration and how to best do what you can, right? And then integrate with this team, right? This team of people that are there for you in a way where maybe you don't understand how these plants integrate or how they affect you long term, right? Well, you're there and you now built up this amazing just resource with the Heroic Hearts Project, right? You're there as this coach, this integration coach, the before, the middle, and the after, right? How does this now move, let's say, the needle forward for the community as veterans? How do you see these modalities to integrate, right? And assist in current circumstances that we find our community in?
So, outside of the psychedelics, at least like what we are doing with Heroic Hearts is I know that I would say 99% of our staff is veterans themselves. Well, 99.9% of them are veterans themselves. And a lot of them, I mean, any vet listening to this will understand. And I know you understand as well. Like, we are people of service. We always have been. We don't really feel right unless we are serving something or someone or something greater than ourselves. And that doesn't have to mean like a big organization or the military. That could mean like our family. Like we want to just like be of service to protect and love our family in that way. But for a lot of vets, when they came, they found a sense of purpose in helping other veterans through this process. So I think not only has our organization given a community inside another community, inside of another community that people can like latch onto and feel that sense of purpose again, but I think this, like what we are doing, we do it with a veteran mindset, and like we do it in a way that like answers the questions that I had that I couldn't get answered before I went to go do these kinds of things. Meaning like, how safe is this? Like, what am I getting into? Do I have someone to support me on the like what, like basically answer all those nagging questions of like, I'm thinking about trying this, but I don't really know if I should or if it's safe or anything else. So like we have covered all those bases by making sure that all of that information is put forth. And that's not just the good stuff. That's like, here's the risks. Here's the things that you're getting into, because if there's anything I know, especially as a veteran, I know when someone's selling me something. Like I know when they're bullshitting me. I'm like, okay, great. It all sounds good, but what happens what's the risk? Like we've all been trained to look at risks, like, and weigh them. So like we make sure we let everyone know the risks, and some people we have to unfortunately turn down because the risks are too high. We don't want them to hurt themselves, either because of the medication that they're on or mental states or anything else. But those risks are real and they can be mitigated. But I'm going kind of on a tangent, but yeah, that's the thing that for community, what it's doing, I think, is it's also opening the door for veterans to not only change the veteran community, because psychedelics are talked about in the veteran community now. Like it's being talked about. But because of that, I think that's also having a cultural shift in America. Veterans are kind of we've always been the guinea pigs of things, and it seems to be working with a lot of vets. And for podcasts like this, for instance, hearing vets talk about their story makes other vets go, well, maybe I can try to find some healing myself in these modalities.
Perfectly stated, right? We want to try stuff. We want to be able to say, hey, all the things we've invested in, it's actually getting us a benefit outcome, a beneficial one, right? I find it powerful because like my journey. It's been an intriguing one, ups and downs, rounds and rounds, and all the different ways it could go. And I find it to be particularly interesting when I share these stories, right? Like yours, the mission of Heroic Hearts Project and the intentions behind it. Because you're right, veterans can read bullshit from a mile away, right? It's one of the particularly great gifts we have as a vigilantly hyper trained individuals that just wants to do good, right? And it's funny to me because the pushback, a lot of the pushback in a lot of these issues like cannabis, ayahuasca, mushrooms, DMT, all the other ones too, guys, all of them, right? I find it to be interesting that the pushback comes from people that actually make a lot of money in the current world the way things are, right? And the way things are 6,400 veterans are killing themselves a year, right? So if we have everything coming out of the Veterans Affairs and the nonprofits that are available in the hundreds of millions and billions in the nonprofit space, right? And then the hundreds of billions, nearly $500 billion annual budget for the VA, where you're looking at how do we then rationalize our investment? I find it it's right at the tip of what we're doing as a community, right? Where how do we then communicate not only the intention, right? Because people go, well, this sounds like snake oil. Well, it's not. It's actually better than snake oil. But P.S. You do know snake oil came from an actual real time where people used medicines and it was actually effective. And nowadays we have medicines that cause tertiary and quadritiary or cinquetiary, I don't know, a lot of secondary bad problems, right? Exactly what you said earlier, which I do want to talk on. The negative effects, right? We discuss them openly. Especially me. I know, hey, if you don't discuss the negatives, their minds are going to wander. And if you have an imagination, which everybody clearly does because they project all these things onto the veteran community, stigmas and all, I go, what if we just, showed people and talked to them about it? Because what are the negative outcomes here that we're talking about?
So yeah, I can go on and on about some of these. So first of all, I would say one of the things we screen for is like if this was a magic bullet, we could take homeless vets off of the street and give them a bunch of medicine, like a bunch of psychedelic medicine, and they would just start becoming like productive people of society and get off the street and figure their life out and all that stuff. That's just not the case.
Mhm.
Psychedelics are an extremely destabilizing substance. They really, the way I like to describe it is it's like shaking a snow globe.
Mm.
Um, and it like afterwards, everything's still kind of falling into place. Um, and so if your snow globe is already far too shaken up, meaning you don't have a good solid like foundation of like stability of what to go back to, it can actually make that worse. And I don't mean like you are tripped out or, it's got like lasting effects. What I mean is that you are already having a hard time like holding on to your reality as it is now. Now imagine warping that reality and having big existential questions about yourself and everything else coming into the mix when you don't have like your bills taken care of or
Mhm.
survival like taken care of, basic like survival understanding taken care of, like all of that, like that stuff needs to be solid before considering doing a big psychedelic experience. Now I'm not talking like microdosing or like things like that. That's a whole different ball game. But another thing is that like if your grip on reality is already a bit shaky, and that's the hard part is you may not know. So what this medically equates to is if you have had history of psychosis, like those kinds of things, this has a way of exacerbating that. It can do that. It doesn't always do that, but studies and anecdotal evidence has shown that if you are schizophrenic or if you have a tendency of losing your grip with reality, um, taking a reality bending substance is probably going to make that worse. Um, Another thing that veterans go through, and not just veterans, but people, is we don't know enough about psychedelics in the space to know what is contraindicated and what's not. Because Schedule 1 substances are extremely hard to do studies on. So we are kind of shooting in the dark with a lot of this, but we have come up with a very extensive list of like what psychedelics are contraindicated with, like, say, ayahuasca or with psilocybin, or like what to expect if you're on an SSRI or a SNRI with psilocybin, what that would be like while you're working with psilocybin, because it's safe in a lot of cases. Some of these medicines are safe to take with it, but it can affect the experience itself and the depth that you may go with it. Now, ayahuasca, for instance, if you're on SSRIs, you're working with an MAOI, and that is very dangerous. It can cause serotonin syndrome. It can cause heart issues, kidney, liver malfunction. All kinds of stuff can come from working with ayahuasca and being on certain medications. So we screen for that as well. And but I always say it like this: if you are of healthy mind and healthy body, the risk that comes with psychedelics is extremely minimal, like extremely minimal. The biggest risk you may have if you are in that place, healthy mind, healthy body, is just the setting that you're in. Like if you are in, because say you have a really, really hard experience, and like in what on the street we call it, bad trip, but I don't like using that because I don't think that there is such a thing. I think there's challenging experiences, but not bad experiences. But if you have one of these experiences and you take it at a party filled with people who are drunk, or at a festival surrounded by people you don't know, and stimulus that's like way overwhelming, you may hurt yourself or somebody else, or run away and get hit by a car or something along those lines. So the setting has a lot to do with the safety mechanism of it as well. If you have a guide with someone who knows what they're doing, who can help calm you down, or at least, as my friend would always say, it's never bad to have a sober driver, around. Because like, even on the risk that, like, say you trip and fall and hurt yourself, like twist your ankle, cut yourself on a knife or whatever, because you're like trying to cut a piece of fruit, and you're like, oh shit, I can't go anywhere because I'm so like in this, like, or maybe it's not that big of a deal, and you start freaking out. Like, all these kinds of things are risks that come with it, which is why I always say, like, do it in a proper setting with somebody that you trust, who's also sober during that time. Or at least having like a sober
trip sitter.
Yeah, like a trip sitter, or a facilitator, as I would call it.
Yeah, that's thank you. That is the better word, facilitator. Absolutely. I agree with that so much, because you're right. Even if I never had this conversation before, for all our listeners, shout out Ireland. They gave me a call the other day. There's this famine going on. Everybody really needs to be paying attention out there. The worst thing that I could think of, right, during my experience was trying to communicate it. I think that was the hardest, absolute most difficult. See, everything that I've experienced is difficult to communicate. Maybe I'm just maybe I'm wired different, right? But what I'm saying is, when I had that experience on psilocybin, it was the most profound, most coming home sensation that I've had ever in my life. It was not I was not afraid. I felt closer to God than I ever have been. I felt this radiated love just pouring out of me on a full vibrate of like just miles just out there. I could have, you said, "Oh dude, do you love that owl going hoo hoo?" I'm like, absolutely, right? It's just this feeling of acceptance and belonging on this planet, and even the minutia of the grains of sand, right, becomes so vivid, and you're like, wow, you're important, little guy. right? And that fractional thinking of importance or significance, merit or titleage, I found to be this obnoxious thing that society has created to merely control us as individuals. That they them thing that we talk about, not the trans stuff, guys. The they them, the government or the authority or the individuals that may not want to do something because of fear, which is fine, right? Maybe it's a fear of loss of capital, maybe it's a fear of loss of control, maybe it's a fear of loss of self-identity, right? But
Maybe it's just a fear of the unknown.
there you go. There you go. The unknown. Now, I got to ask you, when somebody's interested into the Heroic Hearts Project, how do we get involved, and how does someone like myself actually receive and sit with this medicine with a facilitator like yourself?
So it's rather simple. You just go onto our website, which is heroicheartsproject.org. And there's all this information about our program and about what is and what we do. And then there's an apply now button, and then you would apply, and then you basically fill out this application. And then the process from after the application is unfortunately, we have a lot of demand. Fortunately or unfortunately, I say unfortunately because we don't have the capital to get everyone quickly.
Mhm.
So once you apply and then you are accepted from that application, you will get a phone call or an email from somebody that will basically say like, hey, we'd like to set up a call with you to start your first initial screening. And basically you kind of sit with a screener. They ask you some questions about like intentions, history, things like that. And then after you go through your first screening, then you do a medical screening. We have a medical screener go through and we talk about like, are you on any medications? What's your chronic pain look like? What have you been diagnosed with? And then once you clear all that, which honestly, we have a pretty broad open scale for this. So people who are thinking like, there's no way I would get like accepted, that might not be the case at all. It's really like the very rare cases that I don't even want to say we say no to. What we usually say is not right now, because there's usually something that we can do in a process to get somebody ready to do this. And that might be, hey, you're on these medications and it's too risky for you to take this. We're not going to tell you to get off your medications, but if you feel like you're ready to get off your SSRI medications, go talk to your doctor and get on a weaning process that's safe. And then we'll keep you on a list to get you when you're ready. Or if it's like, we need you to get some sort of stability or whatever along those lines, which is usually not the case, but we would set you up with other organizations that could help you achieve the thing that you're wanting to go on one of our retreats. So once you pass all that, you are then basically asked what retreat dates work for you. And you get to pick between doing a psilocybin retreat in Oregon or in soon Colorado. We're about to be moving into Colorado, or a ayahuasca retreat in Mexico or Peru. And then your date is scheduled. Then you get set up with a coach about 3 weeks prior. So you meet up with someone like me, one-on-one basis. And then you also have 3 group sessions. So you get to meet the people you're going with. When I first was thinking about group sessions, it wasn't like, let's do group therapy. It was going off of one of my friends from home who did psychedelics way more than me at the time, who always said like, don't trip with people you don't know. Cause that's like a good golden rule to have, because so we want everyone to meet each other and like get to know each other a little bit. Like
establish that rapport. Yeah.
Yeah. But at least like know who's going out with you and like what you're getting into. And we do some intention setting and group stuff, but and then once you do those 3 prep sessions with your group and with your one coach, and you go out for your retreat, you come back and you do 3 more with your coach and 3 more with your group for integration. And that's over a period of like a month and a half, 2 months on both sides. So you're preparing for like a month and a half, and then you're also like integrating with your group for a month and a half. Or longer, because we'll also give you more sessions with a coach if you need it, because we're not going to just leave you, hey, sorry, done. Like if you need more help or need more support, we're not going to leave you high and dry. That's just kind of the ethos of if we'll move heaven and earth to help somebody if we can. Like we're not gonna just be like the VA and say like, sorry, can't help you. It's like, how can we help you?
I love that approach. It's very powerful dynamic because personally, I've had the most intriguing time with that organization. Uh, I really love how you address not only the fears, not only the potential downfalls, the pitfalls, but actually the reasons why they're pitfalls and downfalls, right? Maybe if we were to shift our intentions as a medical profession, just in general as a society, if we were to actually look on outcome based results, because a lot of these SSRIs and a lot of these medications that are being just spoon fed, forced down our throats, they're then being leveraged to remove things. Well, you're on medication. Okay, so you're not disabled anymore. I'm like, hold on, friend. How does that make sense? Because they even go just as far as saying, well, you're an amputee. Now you have a prosthetic, no problem. And I go, that is not how it happens. That is not the regulations. That's not the CFR code. That is not the law. That is not the integrity or intention of Congress. That isn't anything of anything. And I've heard multiple gentlemen bring up this talking point that even if the VA organizations such as were to provide maybe even the access to such a medication, that once you do it, it will be reviewed as a cure, not as a procedural thing of progress to say, hey, much like the SSRIs that we were only supposed to use for a few weeks at a time, we had you on for 15 years. And then when you told us you didn't want to take them anymore, we abruptly stopped it, which is not legal nor appropriate because of the health concerns that would create. P.S. Yes, now we're going to ask you if you want MDMA, and if you take it, then we will rate you as lower because of the data that we have. And it's this intriguing game that is afoot, not just in technology, but in medicine. And when I find it here in this conversation, in this profound sense of trying to find a solution, not necessarily for lucrative means, but for the intentions of what it is we need, right? We need our brothers and sisters to ask for help. We need to our society to not, what's the word here? Intimidate them from fear or retaliation of asking for help, especially from programs like Heroic Hearts Project, where a fellow veteran, a Marine, right, a brother in Christ, where I see it that way, because when we walk that path, that scary darkness, right, when you go down a hall during a trip, sometimes those doors of perceptions, man, they open up some stuff. And when you seek that path, right, it is very scary. That's why I love that like you said, get to know the people you're going to take a trip with, literally, right? That bond, that ability to build rapport and relationships. It's the initiation of that first very, very big step of what it means to try something new, right? I do want to ask you, how do we get in contact directly to Heroic Hearts Project, and how do we support the socials? How do we clickbait, all the plugs that you can possibly make and shout outs for you? Who's you shooting at?
So you can find us on Instagram, you can find us on LinkedIn, you can find us on all the things, really just Heroic Hearts Project. If you want to support us and not necessarily go on a retreat, there's a donate option on our page. We are a nonprofit, so I always have to have my hand out, because it's every single one of our veterans that gets served and helped is helped by a really wonderful community of donors. And that's from veterans giving back to even some larger organizations that find what we're doing valuable for veterans, and they're just phenomenal, and they help us immensely. So and for veterans or anybody who wants to get a hold of us, you can also find information online on our website, where you can contact us there. And this is not, I want you to know, it may seem like we're a really, really big nonprofit. We're really not. And I mean that in a sense, like, if you send us an email, we'll email you back. Like, you're not going to be talking to some AI or some bot. You're actually talking to a person who genuinely wants to answer your questions or help. So just be mindful of that. So we're always, so if you don't get talked to soon enough, that's something that I can't help, is because, again, we have a lot of veterans who hear about us and they want to work with us. Another way you can support Heroic Hearts Project is we have this amazing new book that just came out. It's called The Veteran's Guide to Psychedelics. And it's all about basically preparing for a psychedelic experience. It's a workbook that we've made specifically for veterans to use before they go on a psychedelic experience. You can use it on your own if you've got one coming up that's underground or in your own home, or if you're going on a formalized retreat or doing therapy or whatever. You can go check it out. It talks about the different psychedelic medicines and all of that. And I think that's it for my selfless plugs. Yeah, I think that's all I got.
That is solid. Solid, solid, solid. Any last remarks? Anything you'd like us to really focus in on before, either about the medicine or yourself? You know, something that we could leave our audience off with.
When I first started working with these medicines, I thought that the key was taking more medicine. And that's a very Western mindset. You know, it was like, oh, if I'm struggling, I just got to go do another trip, or I got to go find another medication, basically like take another aspirin. What I have realized, and what our organization is even centered around, is that more medicine does not mean more healing. But I do think that more community, more integration, meaning like more awareness around yourself and tools in the toolbox, is really where the healing starts. And sometimes we just need a leg up, and that's where the medicine comes in, as that tool to give us some extra help to get to that awareness. So for all of us out there who are seeking peace, I want you to know that you can't find peace anywhere outside of you. You have to find it within you, and no one can tell you how to do that either. So good luck for everybody else out there on that journey towards peace. And hopefully we as a community, not just HHP, but we as a human community, can help you along the way.